Good morning, everyone, to our session of the podcast today. Today, we're going to talk about what are the main challenges faced by the startup located in Latin America and the Caribbean, but the changes in the behavior of the international markets. So, the first of all, we're going to start talking about Pedro. You are the one that's going to start the podcast with your topics about the entrepreneurships that are in Latin America. So, what have you find about it?
Okay, hello everyone. To answer the question, what are the main challenges faced by startups located in Latin America and the Caribbean? By challenge behavior of the international market, we can mainly see that the international market is a highly fluctuated market. Um, so one day we can see that the market is very high, and the next we can see that it may be even higher or much lower. Also, we can see that a fairly important factor in the economy which can cause it change is inflation. So, as we can see at the article, the dialogue leadership for the Americas, the inflation is not a risk, but it's tangible reality in several emerging markets. So nowadays, it can be seen the inflation is affecting the markets of Latin America in the short and in the long term, because this behavior has an upward trend. This manages the economic recovery of the region, cause the different problems that have occurred, such as the COVID-19. So this behavior is created by the fact that increases the prices of raw materials, in general, the price of food and energy. In addition, in most countries, we can find that the real quantity of money continues grow up and at a speed much higher than the quantity of capital and service produced. Um, and finally, to conclude, I can see that around the world, prices have risen faster than usual as the end of the many pandemic-related restrictions created a huge consumer demand that disrupt supply chains have to meet. Different factors have affected Latin America in particular. For example, the global rise in food and energy prices has a fairly large impact on the world most unequal region. Food prices account for a higher proportion of inflation rates in Latin America and economies advanced like the United States. So in continue, we can start with Juan Sebastian.
After hearing that and knowing that information and have a few context of the situation that the world are in right now, I'm going to talk about the GDP per capita. That in a study, they found that the CEPAL from the GDP per capita is around 16,000 dollars per capita, and this is bad because the global average of GDP per capita are around the 16,500 dollars per person. And an important thing to say is that in Latin America and the Caribbean, there is very heterogeneous between the countries. Okay, if we see Latin America and the Caribbean in terms of investment expenditures, we found that this region represents only the 5% of these investment expenditures. And the biggest country in this index is Brazil, that represent the 30% of this total regional. Okay. If we talk about the recovery of the economies, we have to think about the COVID-19 crisis, and in the last year, most of the economies were very affected by this pandemic. And the projections shows that in the current year, there will be a recovery of the economy, but it will be not so that the economy will not be in the same point, in the same thing that the last year. But there will be few like step by step recovery. And in terms of foreign trade, it's more like favorable because the expect increase is like the 20%, and in the first half of the year, we have an increase and expansion about the 19% compared to the same period in 2020. And another important index is about the business confidence and the consumer confidence. And we see that in Brazil and Mexico, there was a very few hit about this confidence, about this index, but in other countries, like the other countries like it would be Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and other ones, that confidence will be not recovered in a short term. And continue with Juan Pablo.
Thus, we have to take into account all the factors that Juan Sebastian and Berger has talked about. And it's about the economy of a country which has a lot of entrepreneurs. It's a country which doesn't have a lot of opportunities. Doesn't means that it doesn't have stable jobs, reliable jobs, secure jobs. This making a big problem that it creates a lot of entrepreneurs in that country, reducing the opportunity on the market because there's going to be a bunch of them doing almost a lot of similar things. So it will be a great competence between each entrepreneurs. Instead of helping them, they're going to try to tackle each other to get more revenues, as is a culture in America, in Latin America. Thus, another factor that we should take into account is how big the economy is. And we take into account all the factors that my friends talk about it. And also we have to take into account something which is the housing. The housing in Latin America is been decreasing by 18% in the last 3 years, which is a lot. Doesn't meaning that people on these countries has less economic power, they are able to purchase things outside the basic needs. So if entrepreneur wants to hit the market, it's going to be way less capital available for these type of products, thus making more difficult the process on entrepreneurship. Thus, the taxes in this country are very high. Thus, in Colombia, the taxes of revenue it's around 30% plus the expenses of the uh, price of the income taxes, which is named in Colombia IVA, and it's a tax make on the purchase that you make. Thus, the government has a lot of uh, money, but that money is not being seen under programs for the entrepreneurs. There's leaving a big gap for the big companies and entrepreneurs to fall. Thus, the big companies taking the opportunity that is not a lot of competence in the government, and the entrepreneurs are not able to fight these big companies, thus they don't have the resources, don't have the capabilities, don't have the market. And these are like the main factors that any entrepreneur has to take into account and fight against when creating a company. And in the last part, we have to take into account the project management indicator, which is uh, between the CEOs. And in Latin America, this PMI is not very good. Thus, people don't have a lot of trust in the economies of Latin America. Just leaving also a big gap for companies from China, from India to bring their products into Latin America, not allowing the local producers to work harder at their potential because they're going to have cheaper prices, they're going to have big quantities, they're going to have a lot of reliability, a lot of competence, a lot of market that they have the economic power in order to make the marketing of it.